we're joined now by Mkhuleko Hlengwa, IFP Member of Parliament, to further the discussion, not only on the legacy of Mkhuleko Buthelezi, but the relationships that he had. Mkhuleko, no doubt a very difficult time for the IFP as it pays tribute to its founder and President Emeritus, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. But I know an exceptionally difficult time for you as well. You are very close to him. Tell us where this father-son mentor relationship began.
Silver, thank you very much, and good evening to you and the viewers. Thank you for your understanding in letting me on the hype given the business that one is confronted with. Well, it's a very long story, and I'm not sure if there's the time, but it starts from childhood and sort of gained a life of its own in 2006 onwards. I was in varsity and when landed as where we are today. I am humbled and privileged to have sat at the feet of the Master. The Prince was everything to me and will continue to be that through his lessons. I've got fond memories, some of them which...
Mkhuleko, I don't know if it's the network. You're saying 4 memories, one of which is? All right, I'm going to see if we can reconnect with Mkhuleko. It is a very important conversation. Mkhuleko, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to pull over momentarily so that the line stays. I'm saying the Prince was a very fun person, very jocular individual, full of wit. But I know one of his biggest gripes with me was my height. And every time he would see me, he would say, but this young man is not respecting us when he's taller than all of us. And I would always retort by saying, I'm your watchtower, I'm guarding what is coming. So there was that also light side to him, and that it humanized him and it made it easy to interact with him. So I really do, at a personal level, feel his loss quite deep. It's a very difficult day, but we derive strength and comfort from the love and messages of condolence and support and prayers we've received from South Africans and our friends around the world.
And obviously, as you try and dash to move from one place to the other, I know you also had a very frank relationship, discussions about a number of issues. Looking back, what were some of those that really hit a mark for you? Your life, how it changed and shaped your thinking, just as a result of those discussions, how you dealt with professional, personal issues. Can you just share some of that?
Well, the open door policy always helped. Because, for 8 years, I was the chairperson of the IFP Youth Brigade. And so most often than not, the issues I would raise with him. But what I found, he was our number one supporter as young people. He would always listen and would want to advocate our cause. I mean, at some point, we wanted 40% youth representation in the policy of deployment of councillors and members of parliament. And he championed that cause for us. I remember a very difficult conversation when the party was going through difficulties with finances, and the youth had to, go through budget cuts, which harmed us terribly. And engaging with him, he was able to go on to, hand in glove with us as we were dealing with the finance department and the treasurer general. On the flip side of it, in the areas of discipline, where young people were found wanting, we would always expect the leadership of the Youth Brigade to stand up and take charge of the disciplinary matters of one of our own, to teach us that we are peers and equals in the processes of leadership. Because sometimes, there's the temptation that the disciplinary matters must be handled by the elders on our behalf. And he would have none of it in an attempt to say that is the burden of leadership and that's the responsibility of leadership. But I really appreciated the fact that you could call him at any time, you could go to his office any time. Let me maybe share one very difficult example because the Prince was a light sleeper. So it did happen that one day my friends and I went out partying, only for the Prince to call me at 12:30, 1:15, in the glaring music that was going on. And casually he said, "Oh, I hope I'm not interrupting you at this late and can we have a chat?" And I was stuck between the rock and the hard place, so I said, "Let me just make sure I get the music turned down." He had a laugh, but was able to also switch gears to be able to ensure that that important discussion that we had to have, we had. So his flexibility and his agility and his understanding of age. You know, so one day I went to that the place there, and the owner who's recently passed, condolences to his family. And I was caught on video doing some dance. And some leaders did not take kindly to that. So the matter was reported and he got to the NEC and the Prince said, "Well, what did you expect of a young person?" He was doing young people's thing. And then he turned to me and said, "Do better next time." So that's the kind of balance that he had and shared with us. And those are the things that were behind the scenes, away from the seriousness. But all in all, he was a man full of love and was, quite accommodating, full of wit, grit, and jokes. And that was fun for all of us.
Mkhuleko, I'll come back to the soft side of the Prince in just a moment, but I do want to tackle something because that textures character of the Prince. He never shied away from speaking his mind, as we said. Prince Mangosuthu saying something very interesting, mourning his passing, saying that the Prince was not a perfect leader. Do you think there's an ambivalence about his legacy on the person that he was? I saw a publication earlier on that was asking saint or sinner, but it also added that Mkhuleko Buthelezi has left an indelible mark on South Africa's democracy.
Well, that's true. The Prince was never identified as perfect. In fact, he would have been the first one to tell you that he's not perfect. And he understood himself to be human, and that built his relationship with Christ, and it built his faith because he was a human being, and he was operating in a human space. But it was the ability to acknowledge that he is not perfect that enabled him to continue doing the work that he had to do. So we are under no illusion about that. But at the same time, that the fact that he was a human being like all of us did not take away from the greatness. It did not take away from the good work that he did and the servant leadership and the effort that he put in to realize, a free and democratic South Africa and the contribution he made across a variety of spaces and sectors, whether it was the environment, education, development, and so on. I mean, you look at Mangosuthu University of Technology, the rebuilding of the University of Zululand, the building of Technikon and teacher colleges in KwaZulu-Natal, a focus on healthcare. So it was in that endeavor to say we must actually try and fail, but never fail to try. You do recall, Tepe, so that he went to Adams College, which is part of the United Congregational Church of Southern Africa, and whilst he was an Anglican, he identified as a child of the UCCSA. In the UCCSA, they have a hymn, the Zulu hymn, which says, "Anginjengawe Jesu, ngozama nokho ngawe, ngimele ungisize." And it is in that realm of personal acceptance that we fully understand that we are not going to caricature him outside what he defined himself.
All right. Mkhuleko, thank you so much for speaking to us. And once again, to Mkhuleko Hlengwa speaking on behalf of the IFP.